incredible opportunity in Atlantic City this weekend for Mark Magsayo, the undefeated 26-year-old from the Philippines, taking on Gary Russell Jr. for Russell's WBC featherweight title in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The Borgata was the venue. Look at that beautiful place for a fight in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This is Fight Vibes coverage and recap of Russell versus Magsayo for the WBC featherweight championship in AC last night. I'm Jim Greasehaber, call me Grease, and right away Magsayo showing off some of that power that has made him a force to be reckoned with. Of course, a Manny Pacquiao protege, trained by Freddie Roach, 23-0 with 16 knockouts coming into this fight against Gary Russell Jr. Look at that power shot to the chest right there. That'll take a little bit out of you right there with Gary Russell Jr. Again, he hadn't fought in 2 years. His father had a foot amputated during this camp. His brother passed away from cardiac issues. Big parts of his team, big parts of his camp, really felt like he was training alone for much of this fight. And if that's not enough for Gary Russell Jr., also fought with what he believes is a torn tendon in his shoulder. That's a holdover injury from the 2008 Olympic run that he made. But Magsayo showing that it was his night. He was a lot quicker than a lot of people, including myself, thought he would be in this matchup against Gary Russell Jr. Some high intensity, a lot of great exchanges in this fight, but it became clear as the fight moved on, Magsayo much quicker than Russell thought he would be. The combinations like lightning coming through and just a really incredible performance. But look at Russell there. Everything's with the left. All left, all left, all left, because the right arm and shoulder were damaged. And I definitely don't want to overstate that and take anything away from Magsayo, but it's a big, big part of what happened in the fight. Now, Russell's title reign, even though it was the longest, 7 years with the WBC belt, he really only fought once a year, only fought 5 times during that reign. So it wasn't like he was a super active champion. You know, at 6 years and 10 months was the longest current reigning champion in boxing in that weight class. So you look at round 7 here, fast-moving fight. Magsayo continuing to put the heat on Gary Russell Jr. And again, Russell only throwing the left. And look at Magsayo. I mean, you see the punches landed round by round there, and some of the scoring, and here in round 7 here, and Magsayo still coming forward so quick. You know, you can see the Manny Pacquiao influence there, and Pacquiao very proud of his protege. An outstanding performance last night by Magsayo. Russell hadn't fought more than once in a calendar year, or hasn't since 2014. You know, maybe a little bit of ring rust there, and of course the injury, you know, had a lot to do with it. Only 64 jabs, far fewer than he ever does in a fight. In fact, Magsayo outlanding Russell overall 150 to 69, 543 to 323. The number of punches thrown, a 41% rate of landing for him compared to just 22 for Gary Russell Jr. Look at Magsayo pouring it on in round 8, and, you know, didn't really hurt him too much or have him in danger of a knockout at any time during this fight. But really, Russell talking about how, hey, I refuse to put this fight back. You can see the speed, you can see the skill, but that right arm just hanging, and he's only throwing the left and was, you know, avoiding using that right arm. And then you look at round 9 now, Magsayo continuing to come forward, and Russell sticks him with the jab on the way in there, but Magsayo just continuing to put the pressure on. Russell says he will request a rematch. Magsayo pretty much dominating this fight from start to finish. And, you know, he threw 203 jabs, outlanded Russell with every type of punch. Look at that body work right there, throwing some power, you know, 26 power punches to 7 for Russell. Russell with a little bit of a slip and a knockdown there. Magsayo against the ropes, continuing to throw those hooks. And, you know, it's awesome to see a young guy like that get an opportunity like this when he stepped in. And he's able to look in round 10 here, continue the pressure. Magsayo not really showing any damage. You can see the speed of Russell there with the jab coming through. But again, without that right arm, you know, it's tough to say that the 2-time Olympian was at full strength. And, you know, Russell said, hey, he gave him a boxing lesson. And this is Russell talking about himself. I gave him, quote, I gave him a boxing lesson. He was able to give him a match. And Russell has a cut open there, and see the power punches continuing to land from Magsayo, just adding up round by round. And you're in the 11th here, and look at this flurry, look at this effort continuing as he senses the fact that he's going to win this fight. You know, and it's a majority decision at the end of the night. You know, 114, one judge had it, but 115, 113, the other two. Russell keeping it close, pretty miraculous with just that one arm. But Magsayo continuing to come forward. You know, 2.5 minutes left here in the fight, and you can see how close it was as they continue and fight toward the final bell here. But, you know, clearly not himself, Gary Russell Jr., but Magsayo a problem either way. Look at that speed, look at that power. At 26 years old, just an unbelievable performance for Magsayo. He goes to 24-0. Russell falls to 31 1 and 2, and you can see the quickness and, you know, the movement from Russell. One of the reasons I thought he might win this fight, but I also didn't know about the torn tendon in his shoulder. Final seconds, Magsayo continuing to put on the heat. The body shot right there, right into the middle of that gut of Gary Russell Jr. Then the combos coming through, splitting the guard. Look at this great cam work, and Russell kind of trying to stay low there, got that jab through, and did as much as he could with the left, hitting him in the body there. The counter right from Magsayo, who continued to come forward. That left right there just pops him. Another big body shot, and you can see Magsayo very excited at the end of this fight, feeling like he did enough to win. Russell battered and realizing that his reign might be coming to an end. Maybe didn't like the decision, but Magsayo falls to his knees and just so happy that he's able to get the job done and win this fight over Gary Russell Jr. to end the longest title reign in men's boxing, the latest Filipino champion.